The wind howled through the trees as Thomas stepped off the worn-out Greyhound bus, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder, the weight of 5 years pressing down on him like a second skin. He hadn't told anyone he was coming back. No phone calls. No letters. No texts. Just silence. After everything that had happened, after the war, the hospital, and the guilt, he didn't even know if he deserved to come back. But one thought kept haunting him through the years, more than any gunfire or night terror. Max. His golden retriever. His best friend. The one who had licked his tears off the floor when he lost his parents. The one who never judged him when his life started to fall apart. The one he left behind when he enlisted, trusting that his younger sister Julia would take care of him. That memory burned in his chest as he made the final turn down the long dirt road that led to their old farmhouse. It hadn't changed much. Same chipped white paint. Same tire swing still clinging to the big oak tree out front. But everything else had changed. He had changed. The house seemed smaller somehow, or maybe he had just grown distant from it. A part of him wanted to turn back, to run, to disappear again and never face what might be waiting or not waiting inside. But he pressed on. Each step felt heavier, almost surreal. When he finally stood on the porch, he noticed the faint sound of barking from inside the house. It was sharp, rhythmic, alert. His heart skipped. Could it be? Could Max still be there? Still alive? Still waiting? Or was it just another dog, another shadow of what he had left behind? He didn't knock. Instead, he stepped off the porch and walked to the side of the house where the old wooden fence marked the backyard. He leaned on it quietly, scanning the area. There were toys scattered around, chew bones, balls, an old rubber frisbee, and near the doghouse, a golden figure lay curled, asleep. Thomas swallowed the lump in his throat. His fingers trembled as he unlatched the gate and stepped inside. The dog stirred slightly but didn't move. He took one cautious step closer, then another. The sound of his boots crunching against the gravel finally woke the dog. It lifted its head slowly, blinking against the sunlight. Max Gray now dotted his snout, and his movements were a little slower, but it was him. Thomas felt his knees weaken. He stood there, unmoving, just watching. He wanted to scream his name, run up, drop to his knees and hug him, but something inside him froze. He wanted to see if after all this time, after all the years, the scars, the changes, would Max still recognize him? Max stood up slowly. He took a few steps forward, nose twitching in the air. Then he paused. His body tensed. Head tilted. His tail started to move, just barely. Then faster. His legs twitched. And then, like an explosion of memory and emotion, he lunged forward. Thomas dropped to his knees as the dog collided with him, tail wagging furiously, paws pushing into his chest, licking his face with desperate, joyful whimpers. It wasn't just recognition. It was forgiveness. It was love. It was 5 years of waiting and hoping and never giving up. Thomas buried his face in Max's fur, sobbing openly, unashamed. He whispered over and over again, "I'm so sorry, boy. I'm so sorry." Max didn't care. He licked the tears off his face, just like he always did, as if to say, "You're home now." Julia stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock, then softened with tears. She hadn't seen her brother in years. The Army had listed him as missing in action after his unit was ambushed overseas. They thought he was dead. She had even held a memorial service. But she never told Max. She never let the dog believe he was gone. Every day, Max would sit by the door at 6 p.m., the time Thomas used to come home from work, and wait. For 5 years. Rain or shine. Snow or storm. He waited. And now, as Julia walked slowly toward her brother, tears streaming down her face, she whispered, "He never stopped believing you'd come back." "Neither did I." Thomas looked up at her, his eyes red and raw. "I wasn't sure if I'd be able to. There were days I didn't even know who I was anymore." Julia knelt beside them and hugged him tightly. "You're home. That's all that matters." That night, Thomas sat on the porch with Max curled up beside him. The stars glittered above, the air was still, and for the first time in years, he felt something close to peace. He told Max everything, the war, the fear, the escape, the months in the refugee camp after the explosion, how he had lost his ID, his memory, how long it took to find himself again, how he never stopped thinking of home, of him. Max listened in his quiet, loyal way, his head resting on Thomas's foot, tail gently wagging. The next morning, Thomas woke up early, went into the kitchen, and filled Max's old bowl with food. Max patted in, still a bit slow, but eyes bright. He sat patiently as Thomas set it down, then looked up at him as if to say, "Let's begin again." The days turned into weeks. Thomas started to rebuild, not just his life, but his connection with his sister, his neighbors, and especially with Max. They went on long walks through the woods, played fetch like the old days, sat on the porch for hours just watching the world go by. Thomas started to heal. His nightmares grew quieter. His scars, both the physical and emotional, began to fade. But one thing never changed. Every evening, at 6 p.m., Max would sit by the door, just in case. Because that's what loyalty looks like. One day, about 6 months after Thomas returned, Julia got a call from a local journalist. Word had spread about the soldier who came back from the dead and the dog that never gave up. The story went viral. Thousands of people reached out with similar tales of animal loyalty, long-lost reunions, and the unbreakable bond between humans and dogs. A local TV crew asked if they could film a segment. Thomas hesitated, but Julia encouraged him. "People need stories like this," she said. "Stories that remind them not to give up." So they filmed. They captured the backyard where Max waited. The reunion. The scars. The healing. And when the segment aired, the internet exploded. Millions of views in days. People cried, commented, shared their own stories. Max became a symbol of hope, of faith, of waiting with love. Thomas wasn't used to attention, but something about it felt right. He even started speaking at local events, veterans groups, schools, shelters, sharing his journey, talking about trauma, healing, and the unconditional love of a dog who refused to forget him. But time, as it always does, moved forward. Max's steps grew slower, his breaths heavier. One evening, about a year after Thomas came home, Max didn't come to the door at 6 p.m. Thomas found him lying peacefully by the porch swing, the stars beginning to twinkle above. He knelt down beside him, cradled his head, and whispered, "It's okay, boy. You don't have to wait anymore. I'm home now." Max passed quietly in his arms, surrounded by the peace he had fought so hard to protect. They buried him beneath the big oak tree in the backyard, next to the tire swing, with a marker that read, "Max, the dog who waited. The friend who never forgot." People from across the country sent flowers, cards, and drawings. Schools read Max's story aloud in classrooms. Veterans brought photos of their service dogs. It became more than just a story, it became a legacy. Today, the farmhouse still stands. Thomas still lives there. He built a small cabin nearby for retreats and counseling for other soldiers dealing with trauma. He called it Camp Max. And every evening, at 6 p.m., he lights a lantern by the tree. A soft glow that can be seen from the road. A silent promise that even in the darkest of times, love remembers. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, it carries the echo of distant paws running joyfully through the field, reminding all who pass that even after 5 long years, a loyal heart never forgets.